Okay, friends, we finally got done benchmarking the Dr. Zaber Mini ITX console killer build. If you remember in the last video, we built it, we put everything together, we put a Core i9 9900K in there on the Z390 Strix. We've got 16 gigabytes Trident Z Royal RGB RAM and this RTX 2080 Ti Founders Edition. All of that is fitting inside this case, which is barely bigger than a PlayStation 4 Pro. Barely, just barely bigger than this. That is insane, super compact, can't even believe it. And if you just flip it around, you got even more goodness. There's also a 2 terabyte NVMe SSD right in here and a 750 watt power supply. This is all beautiful goodness. So we benchmarked it and we're gonna give you the results after I tell you about today's video sponsor. This video is brought to you by our website, UFD Deals. My friends, if you haven't heard of it, UFD Deals is the website where we take all of the best tech deals that we can find on the different websites that exist, put them all on one located area so that you can click on them, save money, and everything's done, whether it be a gaming monitor, gaming hard drive, gaming headset, whatever gaming things you want, gaming graphics cards, even non-gaming ones sometimes like AMD. Ooh, got him, just kidding. Anyways, you go to UFD Deals at the link in the video description to start saving money on any computer component that you want to put together. You save money, we make money off the affiliate codes, and everything just works like a hunky-dory, well-oiled machine. So obviously, I think the biggest question that most people have, besides the actual gaming performance, is the thermal performance. What is the heat like? I mean, we put a 9900K in here with a CPU cooler that's only 47 millimeters in height. Yes, we did put liquid metal on it to hopefully allow for some better breathing room, but still, this is a super beefy CPU. How did it do? Well, actually, the CPU side of things blew me away. So we ran a lot of benchmarks. I think we tested, looks like about 10 to 12 games. I also did some like CPU stress tests and all of that kind of stuff. With IDA 64 running for a while, the highest CPU temperature that we got on the 9900K was only 75 degrees Celsius. That's it. During the entire benchmarking, whether it was games, whether it was stress testing the CPU, 75 degrees Celsius was what we got. I didn't want to overclock the CPU because of the reason that I'm gonna get to about the graphics card. The 2080 Ti did not fare so well. Not only is this a super power hungry card, but then also with the way that the Dr. Zaber case is set up, the CPU is right here, and all of that heat is going to be rising to the GPU section. And while they tried to mitigate that by providing as much blocking of heat as they could, there's a back plane that should be preventing the heat from rising, and then there's a separation down here, it still gets through. So with the CPU generating a bunch of heat, and the 2080 Ti generating its own heat, the fact that it's 2 compartments did help, but at the same time, it didn't leave it in a way that it could actually breathe properly. So this 2080 Ti, through all of the benchmarking that we did, was averaging between 83 and 87 degrees Celsius and peaked at 88 in a couple of instances. Now that's on the default profile. So let's talk about the default profile. No overclock on the CPU, no overclock on the GPU. And what we got was some pretty dang decent results. At 1080p, we benchmarked a whole bunch of games at their highest settings. So that's nothing left to go. We didn't turn anti-aliasing up to like 75 times, but we left that at normal. Everything was on ultra or highest settings. So as good of a benchmark as you could possibly get. Hitman 2, it got 100 FPS. Middle Earth Shadow of War, 145. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, 145 there as well. Strange Brigade got 229 frames per second. Devil May Cry 5, 219. Resident Evil 2, 225. Final Fantasy 15, 127. The brand new Metro Exodus with ray tracing on got 80 FPS. With ray tracing off, it was 91. Assassin's Creed Odyssey did 82, Far Cry New Dawn did 110, and Ghost Recon Wildlands did 88.8. So that's at 1080p. Now, if we compare those results to another test system that we had with the 2080 Ti, we'll see that it's actually about between, on average, 10% lower than an open air system. system. So we're still getting probably one of the best gaming systems that we could get with the 2080 Ti. I mean, 10% less than a 2080 Ti is still not a 2080. So we're getting really good performance out of it, but it is hampered by about 10% or so by being in such an enclosed space. But if we take a look at the 4K benchmarks, we got some pretty results there. So again, this is 4K, highest settings possible, nothing turned down at all. Hitman was 67 FPS, Shadow of War was 69, Shadow of the Tomb Raider was 55, Strange Brigade was 86, Devil May Cry was 93, Resident Evil 2 was 74, Final Fantasy 15 was 57, Metro Exodus ray tracing on was 49, ray tracing off was 45, RTX on because DLSS allowed it to run faster than as if it had ray tracing off. Anyways, Assassin's Creed Odyssey was 47, Far Cry New Dawn was 72, and Ghost Recon Wildlands was 44.7. So in a lot of games at 4K, we're hitting 60 FPS. Ultra settings, the best the games could possibly look in something that's like this. This is supposed to be 4K, but it's usually super sampled 1880p, and even then it's not 60 FPS, it's barely 30. This thing tries its hardest, but bam, this thing in the same form factor does a whole lot more. You see what you can do with engineering, Sony? I wouldn't mind paying $1,000 for a PlayStation 4 Pro so that I could actually get much better performance. But then, so that's the generic benchmarks. Now I wanted to see if we could get this thing closer to an open air system. I decided to set a custom fan curve and I decided to overclock it. So can we see this or is it too bright?
You can see that.
Okay, so I set the power limit as high as it could go. We set 100 megahertz on the core clock, 1200 extra megahertz on the memory clock, and then a custom fan curve, a very aggressive custom fan curve. At 70 degrees Celsius, it's at 100% fan speed. Now you might be wondering, gosh dang, Brett, isn't that gonna get loud? And the answer is yes, it actually does get fairly loud. Here, let me load up Time Spy to just kind of show you how loud this thing can get. But then I want to compare it to my PlayStation 4 Pro and show you how loud it actually is in comparison to a console, not just, oh wow, it's a loud little mini ITX system sitting next to me. Where did I put the power cable? So while the custom fan curve doesn't necessarily allow it to get any quieter, what it does allow it to do, and especially with the increased power limit and temperature limit, we actually got a much better performance out of it. So when this thing was running on stock, the GPU was averaging around 1,550 megahertz, which is its base boost clock. Obviously, the stock clock on this thing is around 1,300 megahertz, so it wasn't very great. And I'm sure some people are asking, but what if you rotate it on its side and not have it vertically mounted? That was horrible. So the same temperature limit of like 88 degrees Celsius, but then what happened was that the clocks just kept going down and down and down to the point that we were in the 1300s by the end of a benchmark of Rise of the Tomb Raider. We actually lost an additional 5% of gaming performance by actually laying this thing flat with the RTX 2080, because the way that Dr. Zaber has set this up is that when you have the foot mounts in there, the way it lays flat is that the GPU is on the desk. So that has limited airflow. The CPU is the one that doesn't really need to struggle at all here. So for our purposes, the CPU being flat would have made a whole lot more sense than the GPU. But now you can hear this is almost 100% fan speed on the GPU. That's not horribly loud. When I measured it from about right here, it's about 56 decibels. So that's a considerable noise if you're sitting right next to it. With headphones on, you're probably not gonna be noticing it. With the custom fan curve, it happens in all games. I'm just gonna set this to run as a benchmark, but then we're gonna turn on the PlayStation 4 Pro and run that, and you guys can hear what that sounds like when it's actually running full load. There it goes. Oh boy. There's the jet engine taking off. I can't even hear that one now. Oh yeah, that's the loudness I'm talking about. Screaming PlayStation. All right, I'm gonna see if I can measure the decibels on this. So this one is, like right next to it, is a good 80 decibels coming out of the exhaust. This one, right next to the graphics card, is a good 70 decibels coming out of the exhaust. There is a 10 decibel difference, and this thing's winding down. And let's just keep in mind that this is running something so much more substantial. So the GPU is at 80 degrees Celsius, 96%, 1750. The entire case gets warm because it actually uses part of it as a heat sink. But overall, it's pretty good. So with the custom fan curve, with the overclock applied, we actually got a lot closer to the open air system when the benchmarks were all said and done. So just taking a look at all of the benchmarks, by just adding the overclock, we were between 5 and 10% faster than just the stock configuration. Again, with temperatures hitting about 88 degrees Celsius on the GPU, but they were hitting that at stock anyways. With the custom fan curve, yes, it was a little bit louder, but we had much better performance coming out of it. And then if we compare the overclock results to the open system, what we see is for the most part, those results come down to about 5% difference between the two systems. And in some games, it was within margin of error, such as with Metro Exodus with ray tracing on, this one was actually 1% faster. And then in most other games, it was between 2 and 5%. So there is a lot that can be done through just upgrading the fan curves. We have the fan curve on the CPU set to turbo the entire time. So 75 degrees for something that is a 9900K is pretty admirable. Let me go ahead and do some live overclocking and see what we can get out of this thing. I'm just gonna see, can we do 5 gigahertz? It's a terrible thing to see, but we should try. Let's go ahead and load up the IDA64 stress test. Yeah, we're running at 5 gigahertz now. See what the temperature is like. Oh, wow. So just at mostly idle, right now we're sitting at about 52 degrees. 57 degrees at idle. This is gonna thermal throttle. There it is, it locked up, it's dead. Yeah, there's no way we're gonna get 5 gigahertz overclock out of this 9900K, but running it at stock, completely fine. The 9900K kept up with the 2080 Ti in nearly every game we were GPU bound, but then also with the CPU stress tests like Cinebench R20 or the IDA64 stress test, everything went pretty swimmingly. I mean, so overall, the Dr. Zaber Sentry build, the Sentry 2.0, does a pretty great job. Would I recommend putting a 2080 Ti in here? Probably not. I would say a 2080 or 2070 would go perfect in this system. The 2080 Ti is a bit overkill, but again, that was the whole point of the build. 9900K, Trident Z Royal RGB RAM, 2 terabyte NVMe drive. With the 2080 Ti, we just decided to go all out, and it actually functionally works as a gaming system. It performed better than as if it was an RTX 2080 in this system. So this is great. The fact that you can get a console-sized system that absolutely destroys any console that's on the market and probably destroys 99% of everybody else's PCs that are out on the market. This is truly, there's been a ton of innovation that's been going on in the mini ITX segment over the last few years, and I just want to give a big thanks to Dr. Zaber for sending the Sentry 2.0 over for us to check out and to set some records. I think we're going to keep this around. We're going to pair this with something probably like a G-Chic portable monitor or a portable monitor that uses USB for power and then hasn't dedicated HDMI input, and then we'll take this with us to Computex to actually edit our footage on, because we have laptops, but they're just mobile laptops. We can get a fully fledged 9900K editing our videos with 16 gigabytes of RAM. We could probably throw 32 if we got 16 gigabyte DIMMs, and then we could have a beefy graphics card in here as well, and it's gonna just it's gonna be pretty dang small. So that's the end of this video. Let me know what you thought of us checking out the Dr. Zaber PC. Let me know what you think of us comparing console size stuff. I'm keen to hear what you want from us down in the comments down below. Don't forget that today's video is brought to you by UFD Deals. Check it out at the link in the video description. Save money on your next computer component so that we can make money and everybody's happy and we can continue to do videos like this. Or if you don't want us to do videos like this, hit the dislike button twice. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Get subscribed to stay up to date on all of our tech-related content. I'm Brett with the UFD Tech Channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see your smiling faces in the next video.